Hey there everybody, it's Mike DiLisio, and today I'm going to be reviewing Cyclades, the Legendary Edition. Will it cover my face? From designers Bruno Catala and Ludovic Mablanc. This Legendary Edition is a version of a game called Cyclades that came out in 2009. Within subsequent years, two different expansions, main expansions, were released, Hades and Titans, and what this copy of the game does is it takes elements from both of those expansions, reworks them a bit, and implements them into the base game of Cyclades so that you've got a new edition of the game that has little bits from both of the expansions. Let me go over to the table. I'm going to give you a high-level overview. I'm going to assume you have some knowledge of Cyclades. Then we'll come back here and I'll let you know what I think. All right, here we see an example 3-player setup game for Cyclades Legendary Edition. This is going to be a very high-level overview because there are multiple videos on the channel already talking about the original Cyclades, which came out in 2009, and the expansions, which are actually elements of incorporated into this. So this is basically the base game of Cyclades with some incorporated elements from the expansions in one new package. Do want to point out that this is the retail edition of the game, and so you're seeing wooden fleets and troops, and you're seeing cardboard buildings, and you're seeing standees for the creatures and for the heroes, things along those lines. There are editions of the game that have miniatures for the buildings and miniatures for the troops and the fleets. Right now you actually can get in retail the miniatures for the heroes and for the creatures, so that is something you can incorporate right away if you wanted to add that to your retail edition of the game like you see here, and I believe the other elements are going to be available eventually as well. All right, in Cyclades, what you are trying to do is you are trying to be the first player to get 3 metropolises at the end of a cycle or a round. If you are the sole player to have 3 metropolises at the end of a cycle, you win the game. If, however, at the end of that cycle you're tied, then it goes down to coins, which will be the tiebreaker. How are you going to get access to these metropolises? Well, you're going to get access to them by utilizing the power of the gods. And so these gods are going to allow you to do different actions that are going to allow you to do things out here on this map that will lead to the building of the metropolises. So the way you get access to these is through an auction. And so just to show you kind of what it would look like in a 3-player game, you would have a number of gods face down. You're going to have access to 3 gods per cycle. All right. And so in this example, we'd have red first, then yellow, then green. When you are auctioning, what you're going to do is you're going to be taking your pawn and you're going to be placing it on one of the available face-up gods for that cycle, and you're putting it on an amount that you are willing to bid for the access to the powers of that god. So in this case, you've got Ares, you've got Zeus, and down here at the bottom, pre-printed and always available every cycle is Apollo. All right? Apollo has a single spot, only one player can go there, and they don't pay anything to get access to their power, but their power is not terribly powerful. It really gives them a little bit of income and allows them to put tokens on the board which increase income in later rounds. Let's say, for example, red here going first, they decide they're willing to bid 3 to have access to the powers of Ares. Yellow now has got a couple of options. Yellow can go to any spot on Zeus because it's unoccupied, or they can take the spot in on Apollo. If yellow goes here, then green no longer has access, and neither does red, to Apollo. But instead, maybe yellow thinks, hey, I'd like to get Zeus's power for nothing. I'll just go ahead and go there and see what happens. Well, green comes along and says, no, I'm willing to spend a couple of coins here to get access to Zeus, so they go to Zeus. They have to bid higher, of course. Whenever a player is outbid, they immediately take their pawn and they are going to put it in a new location. Yellow's option here is to either outbid red for Ares or to go to Apollo. You cannot immediately outbid on the same god you were just bumped from, but let's say that yellow goes ahead and goes here, bumps off red. Red says, yeah, I want this. Goes here, bumps green. Green goes to yellow. Yellow can now go back to there, but basically everyone's going to keep jockeying until they've all either outbid other players or have just chosen the god that they're going to have. At that point, you'll pay the amount that you have bid, and you're going to get access going from top to bottom to the powers of the gods. All right, so let me just flip all of these over. This is not how it would normally look, but just so you get an idea. When you get access to these gods, they're going to do a couple of different things. Number one, they're all going to give you some type of a mandatory action, which is represented between these open hands here. All of them are going to give you, all except for Apollo, I should say, are going to give you access to build a basic type of building, okay? So in the case of Ares here, you're building a fortress, which is going to help you in defense when you are attacked. It's also going to allow you to put one of your troops on an area you control, and potentially you can buy up to 3 more troops. You can move troops that you control around the map, spending a coin at a time. Also, every one of the gods, except for Apollo, are going to allow you to purchase one of these legendary creatures that are along here on the left side of the board. Okay, so all of them are going to give you access to a basic building. Here, Ares gives you the fortress, like I said. Zeus is going to give you access to a temple, which is going to allow you to purchase these creatures more cheaply. Poseidon is going to give you access to a port, which is going to help you in sea battles that are adjacent to the land area that it's on. It's also going to allow you to build ships onto the board. Athena is going to allow you to place a university, which in and of itself doesn't have any specific power, but one of the things that happens is when you've built one of every one of the 4 basic buildings, then you remove those and you replace it with one of the 3 metropolises that you need to win the game. Hera will give you any basic building you don't already have access to and allow you to recruit a mercenary that you can add to some of your troops to fight on your behalf, and you can get extra ones. All of them are going to have, again, some optional actions that you can pay for to take and get access to the creatures, do heroic moves, and a heroic move, basically you get heroes by paying for them through that power of Hera, and these are going to be some special troops that you add, and they're going to give you some type of a power. So actually, let's just use Odysseus here. Odysseus says that when attacking, they ignore the effect of fortresses. So all of these heroes are going to give you some type of a combat power. They're also going to all have some type of a sacrificial power, which, as it says on Odysseus's case, if you have 3 basic buildings of the same type, destroy them and build a metropolis. So all of them are going to allow you to have another way to build one of the 3 metropolises that you need to win the game. But you then remove them from the game, take their standee or mini off the board accordingly. Okay? And so this is going to be kind of the cycle that you go through. You're going to be recycling, I should say, not recycling, but cycling these gods. So you have access to different gods. Let's say that this was the first cycle. This is going to scoot down to the bottom. These are all going to move up. This goes face down. And then we reveal the next god. So that as you can see, you're kind of cycling through, and you're not going to always have access to all the gods during every cycle. So you have to keep that in mind. As I said, you can be recruiting creatures also. Some of them are just one-time use, like this Dryad, where you steal a priestess card from another player. Other ones are going to actually have a associated standee or mini, depending on the version. And it's going to show you that by having a little icon there. This tells you place the creature in a land area. And it's going to give you a particular power. As long as you control it, you win the area's income during the income phase. Also, these are at their base a 1-cycle access power. So whoever controls this creature would have access to it for that cycle. However, if they spend a priestess card during a particular phase known as the maintenance phase, they can keep access to this creature again and even have a chance to move it to an adjacent spot. So unless you spend a priestess card to keep these are one and done creatures. All right? That's the general idea behind the game. There are other ways to get metropolises. You can turn in 4 of these philosopher cards that you gain access to through Athena here. But trying to get that 3rd metropolis, be the one to have that 3rd metropolis at the end of a cycle is going to get you that victory. All right, that's the very big basics there. Let's head back over and I'll let you know what I think. Okay, so as I said, that was a high-level overview. I tried not to get too lost in the weeds because I was going with the assumption that you had some idea of what the base game of Cyclades is about. If you don't, as I said, there are videos on our channel where you can get more of an idea on the base game of Cyclades, where kind of it started and where it has progressed to in this edition of the game. I do want to state out that on a personal level, I have played the base game a number of times. It has always been a game that I highly, highly enjoyed. I believe it was in my top 100 for a period of time, but I had never played either of the expansions. Hades was an expansion that I kind of read about, wasn't terribly interested in it. Titans was one that I was very interested in. I just never had a chance to play it. And so this edition of the game is including some elements that are brand new to me, but may not be brand new to players who have played one or both of the other expansions. I just wanted to point that out as a point of reference when I'm discussing things in my review. The first thing I do want to talk about is the production. First of all, let's start with the art. Miguel Coimbra, as it says here, and from the cover on down, I just think the art is stunning. It's beautiful. I always liked the look of Cyclades. I always thought the art in Cyclades was tremendous, and this is certainly no downgrade. I think it looks fantastic. It looks bright and vibrant on the table. I love the art on the cards. The tiles, actually, I didn't show this in the overview, but this is one side. You can actually use the other side of the tiles as well. You just want to be consistent among them. But I mean, I think everything here is still perfectly visible, and I love the look of these tiles. So bright and vibrant, very, very attractive illustrations and art throughout the game. The quality of the cardboard components are quite good. As I mentioned, what you saw in the overview was the retail edition of the game. I gave you a brief glimpse at the miniatures that you can add for the creatures and the heroes, but there is another edition that has miniatures instead of the wooden components. So the cardboard and wooden components are all very good. I have no complaints at all. Nice thick cardboard. Now, are these as flashy as minis are? Of course not. But again, they're perfectly functional. They're still custom minis. Custom wooden meeples, and I have no problems with them at all. Will I one day replace them? We'll see, but for now, I'm happy with the wooden pieces as I have them. The god tiles, very thick, very, very nice. Card quality, very good. So component-wise, there's really good quality. The rule book is something that is a bit of a mixed bag. Okay, I think that the rule book is serviceable. It's not terrific. I think some of the order of things is a little bit more confusing than it needs to be, but it's a serviceable rule book. I had no problem incorporating the elements of the game that were unfamiliar to me just through learning by reading the rule book. So serviceable is, I think, what I would go for that. So gameplay. So here's the thing. As I mentioned at the onset of this review, this is a game that I already liked. I rated Cyclades, I believe the last rating I had for it was an 8.5, and that was just the base game. And there have been several changes. And so I've just kind of listed some of the big, not all of the changes, but I've listed some of the big changes from the base game of Cyclades to this Ultimate, or excuse me, Legendary Edition. Ultimate is the super fancy Kickstarter one. With this Legendary Edition, and I'm going to give you just briefly my thoughts on each of those changes. First off is a modular map. I showed you where you can just choose 2 per number of players, any one of these map tiles. You put them together really in a number of different configurations, and you go from there. I think that's a huge upgrade from the base game of Cyclades, where everything was static and you kind of got to know where the different regions were, and that was just something that wasn't even really an element of the game. The modularity, the idea of modularity on the board was not even a thing in the original edition of the game, and I think it does add quite a bit to the game here. I do think that was something that was an element of Titans, if I'm correct, and I'm not positive because I, again, haven't played Titans, but I think that's something that they kind of brought in from Titans. So the modular map, a big plus in my opinion. The mercenaries. These extra little troops that you can add through the power of Hera, which is also a new god, but I'll get to that in a moment. Mercenaries are great. I mean, it's a kind of a why not thing for me. It allows you to get a little bit more troop presence on the board, and so that is good and can allow you to have a bit more presence on the map than you would with just your standard base troops. So those are good. The Metropolis bonuses, the little one-time, well, maybe you hope one-time benefits on the back of the Metropolises. I'm ambivalent to those. I don't think there's any problem. I believe that originally the first couple of Metropolises, they would have like a power, but that's been kind of gotten rid of, and now it's just when you construct a Metropolis, you get whatever the power is on the back of it, whatever the boon is on the back, and then if you are moved from an area that you had already established as a metropolis, you get that again, not the person who took it over. I do like that quite a bit. It removes a little bit of the sting that you feel from someone coming in and taking that metropolis that you've built and have been hopefully defending. So I do like that as well. The game end trigger is different. It's now 3 metropolises to trigger the end game, where it was 2 in the original. And that makes perfect sense, because one of the other big differences in the game now to when I first played it is that buildings are free to construct. They used to cost gold to build buildings. And so not only would you have to bid for the power of the god, but you'd have to pay for the buildings. And so now getting those buildings as a mandatory action that is associated with the god, I like that a lot more. I feel like it drives the pace of the game forward. You feel like you are doing more on every turn than you were, I think, in the original version of Cyclades. I love that. And therefore, having 3 be the trigger makes sense. It does not change what I feel like is really the balance of the game in any way. It just makes it feel a little bit more forward momentum than it had before, which is a positive for me. The way that the god tiles cycle is different now. Now it's a kind of a set program where whatever the god is at the top is now going to go to the bottom, and you're not going to have access to it for 1 or more cycles, again, depending upon player count. Whereas before you would just shuffle them and you may get access to the same god over and over and over again just through the vagaries of shuffling things. I find this a positive because you can plan a little more. It can be a little bit tricky if you really were wanting to be able to utilize a particular god over and over and over again. You at least had the hope of that in the original version of the game, and now you don't. You kind of know when you're going to have that. But it does, I think, make jockeying for those god powers even more crucial than it was originally. And I like that. When Ares has been out of the game for a cycle or two, people are going to really want, that's just an example. Choose any of the gods. When they've been out of cycle for a round or two, that makes it even more juicy when they do come up and more hard fought. So I personally like that a whole lot. They've changed Apollo, where Apollo used to be that every player can go there, and now it's only 1. I like that as well. I think it's a more dynamic system. It kind of keeps... It just, again, I think it increases the feeling of impact for the auction, which to me is the heart of this game. I'll get to that in a moment. Zeus's ability changed, which was a huge complaint for a lot of people in the original version of the game. They felt like, being able to cycle through the creatures as much as you wanted led to a particular problem where people were able to cycle through until they got the creature they wanted, most often Pegasus, so they can pick up all their troops and then just go for a big 1-turn win of the game. Well, that's been changed now. You can look at the top card of the creature deck, and if you want it, you pay a coin to get it. That really helps with that issue quite a bit. All right. The new god Hera is one that allows you to get one of those basic buildings for free. It allows you to hire those heroes, which are another huge difference in this game. I believe that the heroes were something from, I'm not sure if it was from Hades or from Titans, but this is another troop that gives you some type of a combat ability, and it also allows you to take heroic actions using any of the gods. And so that's another big thing. In the original game, really, you can only move your troops using Ares or a creature power. And now, with almost any of the gods, except for Apollo, you can take heroic movement actions. As long as you have hired a hero, you can move troops along with that hero across the board. I believe that that is similar to what Titans did in the Titans expansion. And so I love that. I think that's great. So overall, what I'm gaining from this, as far as the changes go, is that this is much more implementing Titans and much less Hades, which is probably the ratio it should have been based on everything that I've seen and heard about the strength and weaknesses of those two expansions. And so now you have a game that I already really liked very highly, and actually liked higher or liked more than some of the other games that it oftentimes got compared to, like Kemet, because I so adored the auction element of the game. So yes, it's a troop on the map game. It can be very interactive. You're having land battles, you're having sea battles, which I didn't even really talk about in the overview, but they're certainly in there. You've got all of that going on, but it's all being driven by this really tense auction that you're doing every cycle. And so you've got that. And now you've got all of these changes, and every single one of those changes for me have been to a either even or high or very high level. And now you're getting to a game that I just absolutely adore. I'm giving Cyclades, the Legendary Edition, a 10 out of 10. This game is incredible. This is now the only way I have any interest in playing Cyclades at all. Now, someone can come along and tell me, oh, you should really play Titans as it is. I'm not sure I want to. It sounds like I got the best of Titans right here. It sounds like I've got the best of Hades right here. And they even made little tweaks to the original formula of Cyclades. This, to me, is kind of what it was meant to be, which is a director's cut of this classic game that the original designers got back together and said, how can we make the definitive edition of this game? And I really feel like they did. I feel like they knocked it out of the park. 10 out of 10. Love Cyclades Legendary Edition. All right, well, that's going to do it for me. This is Mike DiLisio signing off, and I'll see you on the next one.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you like this review or whatever you just watched, wasn't it amazing? Check out our channel, Dice Tower. We have all kinds of things. We review games, we do top 10s, we play games live. It's all about board games, but especially the people who play them. Check out Dice Tower YouTube channel.